There was no insurrection, and to call it an insurrection, in my opinion, is a bold-faced lie. Watching the TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through Statuary Hall showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes taking videos and pictures. You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
Michael Steele, that's absolutely disgraceful. Casey Hunt was in the building. She knows what happened. Again, we all watched it happen on television. We've watched the video now for 3-4 months since then. You were the chair of the Republican Party a decade ago, which must feel like the Mesozoic era to you at this point. It was so long ago. But what do you think as you sit and watch the progression of yesterday play out, beginning with that quick voice vote to get rid of Liz Cheney, thrown out of her job in leadership because she had the audacity to say the election was not stolen, Kevin McCarthy coming out of an Oval Office meeting where President Biden is trying at least to present the idea of bipartisanship, sending out a fundraising text calling him corrupt Joe Biden, saying he's pushing a radical socialist agenda. And then to see those United States congressmen sit in an open hearing in Congress and lie, push conspiracy theories, trutherism about what happened on that terrible day in January.
Well, it's just a string of situations, vignettes into what the Republican Party now is. It's not a question of what it's becoming. It is now an affirmation of what it is. What they did to Liz Cheney was taking it to the next and probably final step in terms of how we now begin to purge people, push them out of leadership, push them ultimately out of the party. We will only want those who agree with us. We only want those who will sell the big lie to the American people. And we only want those who, with a straight face, will go on camera and say, oh, yeah, we're going to meet with the president, but then send out a mailer saying, hey, I just met with the corrupt guy and, send us some money. So you get an idea of what the grift is. You get an idea of what the politics are. And the question now becomes, and it goes to what Casey was saying earlier, how does this leadership, how does this party think it's going to move forward, reconcile itself with Liz Cheney still there in the House? She's not going anywhere. She's going to be a constant reminder of what they did and why they did it. She's going to be a constant reminder of what the party is. And she also will be a reminder, along with a lot of others of us out here, of what the party should be and where the party should go. So there's going to be this tension. A lot of folks are like, oh, there's no civil war. The Trump wing won. OK, that's a skirmish. That's the initial battle. The fight isn't on yet. And I think, we'll have Adam Kinzinger on later. He can talk to you about that fight and what that looks like and what a lot of members, both inside and outside of politics, currently feel about where this party is right now. So it was a sad day. You can say all of that, but it's a day that was inevitable. I mean, Donald Trump built this coffin. The Republican Party willingly got in it. And he has systematically, along with their help, nailed it up. So that old party is dead. Now let's deal with what we got. And that's where we go from here.
But I mean, isn't what we got is these Republican, well, I hate to call them Republicans, if the true definition of the Republican Party is what it was and represents true conservatism. Those are not Republicans that we just saw.
Right.
Aren't they lying at some point, lying under oath? And lying to the American people. I know we're getting so used to being lied to because of President Trump and this unbelievable fire hose of lies and cruelty that he spewed out of the office of the presidency onto the American people, that we have become completely desensitized. But Congressman Fallon, Gosar, and Clyde, these are corrupt, lying politicians who are marching lockstep behind a wannabe dictator who is not even in office. This is beyond sick. And I don't understand why there's no recourse. I mean, legally or in the political process, in the oversight process, How is there no recourse, Michael Steele?
Well, the recourse, Mika, is at the ballot box. It's the voters who sent them to Congress. I mean, you know, I live in Maryland.
But if they're being lied to, Michael Steele, if voters are being lied to,
Mika,
and they're bringing in those lies from Fox and from Newsmax and from Donald Trump and his pathetic little website, I mean, these people are being misled.
They are. There's no doubt about that. But I can't unelect him. I'm not as he doesn't represent me in his district. I don't live in his district. So it's the people in his district. It's the people who sent him to Washington, who send them there. That's part of this challenge. This is why what's happening at the ballot box and why the
Michael Steele, the challenge is being Michael, the challenge is being distorted by
so Mika,
Facebook.
what would you do?
Fox.
What would you do from New York or Florida? What would you do? What would you do to what would you do to a representative from Texas? What would you do?
Well, first of all, I would be very concerned about the truth. If you were representative from Texas, I would stand by the truth and the Constitution, and quite frankly, I would put country over any of this. They are choosing not to. But then all of their lies, they're choosing to be corrupt liars and to follow this pathetic old man holding lounge acts at some place in Palm Beach where he has a band that's hired to support him. It's pathetic. It's pathetic the way they're acting. I can't change them, but I can support legislation that keeps places like Facebook from being sued for promulgating lies. It's this sick cycle that this country is like circling downward in. And I wonder why there's no recourse anywhere.
Well, the recourse is when you unelect them. That's where the recourse ultimately lies with the American people. And until you get to that ballot box moment, that's why you have to call it out. You have to expose it, like Liz Cheney and others have been trying to do, to say that this is not what we accept, nor will we stand for. So you bring that kind of pressure. You hope that the people in his district, in their districts, will agree with you and when the time comes, vote them out, or that you can summon enough support to move against that particular individual to move them out. So that's what this process is about. When you see them trying to change the ballot, the voting laws, you understand why, because they recognize at the end of the day, Republicans, like anybody else, recognize they're only there because there's a vote that's behind them. When that vote is taken away, they're no longer there. So let's change the rules. Let's make it harder. Let's make it more complicated and difficult. Let's put it under the guise of reform. But we know at the end of the day, it's about preservation. So that's where the fight is now. That's what the fight is moving into right now. And I agree with you. We have the concern, but we also have to recognize we can only do but so much at this point because we're not in an election cycle. We're not there yet. So we've got to make the case to those voters to get them to understand exactly why this is important for their districts and why it's even more important